I just want,
money comes to me with minimal effort.
It's like, I'm only gonna be happy if I marry a werewolf.
Hey guys, welcome back to our channel. My name is Shanta and I am your resident lover of all things fantasy. And today we're gonna have a little bit of a different video. I'm gonna be talking about my favorite series from time. So it doesn't really have like a timestamp, it's just my favorite series ever so far. And obviously there are more series that I am reading or will be reading in the future that might also be added to this list, but this is just for right now. Enjoy my neighbor's dog who always barks whenever I'm filming, barking in the back. I'll try to edit him out as much as possible. Welcome to this channel if you are new, and welcome back if you are not new. This is Hooked on the Books, where we give you the scoop on all things fantasy and all things reality. Every other week, baby. We are well-rounded, as the girls like to say. So let's get into the video. Okay, so the first series I'm going to start with is going to be called House of Night, and this is by PC and Kristen Cass. They're a mother-daughter duo, and they basically wrote this entire, this is a long ass series. This series consists of 12 books in the first series, and then there's a spin-off series that has 4 books. So let's get into the little synopsis. The book is present. So this is definitely classified under dark academia, and the tropes are very much your usual young adult fantasy tropes, with the chosen one trope, and then, you know, enemies to lovers and friends to enemies. All those kind of tropes are in here, and it is great. I think the thing that had me hooked on these books the most is obviously, like, I'm like a teenage girl going through adolescence, and so are these characters, but they're also kind of going through like sexual awakenings at the same time. So I was really getting a taste of like mild erotica, I want to say, which I ate up as a little 16-year-old for sure. This series follows 16-year-old fledgling vampire Zoe and her group of friends and their crazy, oftentimes murderous adventures at the House of Night Academy. When a teen hits like their adolescent years, so 16 and up, and their hormones start going crazy, they may or may not get a little DNA spike, and that little spike is what causes them to turn into a vampire. So in this world, the vampire gene is something that's passed on. It's not something that you have to be like bitten to get. The way that you know that you're turning into a vampire is that you get a crescent-shaped blue moon on your forehead, and that is your mark, and that marks you as a fledgling. And the fledgling process takes 4 years, which is the 4 years that you go to the House of Night Academy. Then you enter into the world of adulthood vampirism. So another cool thing to note is that each of these fledglings has an affinity to one of the 5 elements. Our lead girl, Miss Zoe Redbird, is exhibiting the chosen one trope, and she has an affinity for 5 elements, which are earth, wind, fire, and spirit, and something else. Earth, wind, fire, spirit. Is that 5? That's 4. Water. That's what I was missing. I was missing water. So she's basically kind of like the ringleader of her group, and she has all these issues with her teachers and with other students. It's very much based, as I said, in the dark academia world, so a lot of the drama takes place inside of the school. If you haven't read these books and you're into vampires, then I will definitely say give those a read. They really were so good. So the second series we're going to talk about is called The Selection by Kiera Cass, and this is basically a kind of Cinderella retelling, but if we knew the end of the Cinderella story and if Cinderella was happy or not. It also has aspects of The Hunger Games and The Bachelor at the same time. This series has 5 books, 2 prequels, 2 other books from the viewpoint of 2 of the other main characters. So basically it's a futuristic world divided into numbered caste systems, and the castes are 1 through 8, and if you're 1 you're like an elite or a royal bourgeoisie, and if you're 8 you're basically homeless, like a drug user. That's that. And each number has a different work in society, so that's why I'm kind of like, it's kind of Hunger Gamesy. This is when we were really all into dystopian world. The protagonist of this story, her name is America Singer. Yes, America Singer. She is in case 5, and that's the case for musicians, artists, dancers. I'd be in case 5. So basically they have no money. Correct again. The kingdom in which they all live is called Elia, and the Prince Maxon, decides to hold what is called the selection, which is basically The Bachelor. And it's a televised competition. 34 girls from different castes are put into the palace and basically compete for Maxon's affections. His father did it before him and found his mother, and they ended up pretty good. So I guess Maxon was like, well, this is the only way that I'm gonna do it, and also kind of distract his kingdom from the fact that, you know, their life is shit because they're basically put into castes where they can't ascend from whatever they're in. They're basically stuck where they are. There's also some kind of rebellion storyline as well during the story. It kind of terrifies some of the girls that are in the competition and cause them to leave. America herself, she didn't even want to be in the competition in the first place. She had a boyfriend. He was a case 4, which is the servant class. So he wasn't making dog shit either, honey, and couldn't take care of her. And she was fine with that because she loved him. First mistake. Because we are city girls over here. Okay? City girls over here. And he ended up breaking up with her because he felt like she was doing too much and he wanted to be the provider. So Miss America was like, fine, do what you want. I'm gonna pack my bags and I'm gonna go into the princess little palace and we're gonna see what we can kick off. It wasn't really that she wanted to go either though, but they were offering a stipend to the girls who were chosen for the competition. It's just a really nice romantic story. The Ashes of the Rebels is good, but the real draw for me was always Maxon and America's relationship. I love a good enemies to lovers trope, or just like, I don't care anything about you, I'm the cool girl, like you don't have anything on me, baby, and then you woo the heck out of me trope. I'm most times the like, boys disgust me, don't come around me, and then one that disgusts me a lot would come around me and I'd be like, disgusted, and then he's like, let me wear my magic, and I'm like, okay. It's one of those little teeny TV networks has picked up the book and they're going to be making a series out of it, so I'm very excited to watch that play out. This book came out in 2013, so I'm very excited to see how they spice it up, because basically we are in the future now, innit? Right? So my third favorite series, actually this is in no particular order, but the third on the list is The Darkest Powers, and that is by Kelly Armstrong. If you don't know who she is, she also wrote Bitten, which is also a TV show. She's the reason that I transitioned into loving werewolves more than I did vampires at the time. She really like took me by the neck and dragged me through my obsession, basically. So in this series there are 3 books. The first one came out in 2008, but then there are also 7 short stories, so it's one of those where there's a chronological order. It's another dark academia setting, and so we're following 15-year-old Chloe Saunders, who has a mental breakdown at school because she starts seeing what she thinks are hallucinations of people, and is then admitted into this like facility for mentally troubled teens. And it turns out that Chloe is actually a necromancer, and all of the other teens that are in the facility with her are a part of, you know, the paranormal or the supernatural universe, and they're all being experimented on by the owners of the facility. The facility is called Lyle House, and the owners are the Edison Group. The Edison Group has been experimenting on supernatural teens from time, and Chloe and her group have realized this and are basically on a mission to figure out why they're being experimented on, how they got their powers, how it's affecting their powers, who's doing the experimenting, and who else has, you know, been lost to these experiments. There's a character in this book called Derek, and he and his, I guess, adopted brother Peter also in Lyle House and also being experimented on. Derek has a terrible temper, apparently is not very cute, has terrible acne, is just not a stunner at all, but is like 7 foot, always runs hot, and just is like super kind of grumpy and broody, and has dark messy hair. Obviously he loves Chloe, like obviously, like that's just where we're going. But the description of their relationship as it goes along, again, I'm obsessed with enemies to lovers trope. I feel like werewolves just suit me better, you know, they're always super tall and I'm really small, and they run really hot, and I don't know, they just feel like, ooh. I think it's the animal instincts, like the instinct to protect and the instinct to, like, you know, be like, oh, this is my woman. I'm very into Neanderthals. If I'm attracted to a boy, it's mostly because he's like super tall, long arms, like looks like if he could kill me a lion and build me a house. How werewolves are written and described is very much like the Neanderthal. Their first instinct is just always to protect, and then they, like, you know, love who they love hard, and they tend to only like love that one person. My thing with Darkest Powers is that I just really wish it was longer. Like, I finished that trilogy and I wanted for more. I wanted more Chloe and Derek. I was too obsessed with the characters and I felt like I didn't get enough of them. Okay, so we're on to number 4. And this is an oldie and will always be a goodie, and it's The Inheritance Cycle by Christopher Paolini. And this obviously consists of Eragon, Eldest, Risinger, and Inheritance. There's also a movie for Eragon, which everyone hated. I wasn't mad at it because Ed Spielers, who played Eragon, was a babe, okay? So I was not mad seeing him on my screen. This particular series utilizes a lot of the ancient magical systems, being like elves, dragons, trolls, dwarves, and so it's kind of like a parallel to Lord of the Rings as well. Similar in the way it's written. It's very thick. These books are thick, like over 1,000 pages for each book. Christopher Paolini actually literally took about 2 to 3 years between each book. It was honestly torture because I really love this series, and I was constantly trying to, you know, be like, oh, what's next? Now, these books started coming out from 2002, and he ended the series in 2011. Okay, so let's get into it. So it's set in the magical kingdom of Alagasia. It's an ancient magical land once run by elves and dragons, but descended into dictatorship when Galbatorix set out on a path of revenge because his dragon, there's these entities called the Dragon Riders, and basically they are chosen by dragons to ride with them and to bond with them and share magic. And Galbatorix's dragon was killed, and he blamed his other dragon riders. When your dragon dies, you basically lose your soul, like, because that's your soulmate basically. So he kind of was driven mad by revenge and ended up wiping out all of the dragon riders of that generation, including all of the dragons. He managed to steal the soul of one dragon, or the mind of one dragon, and then the elves managed to steal an egg. And the thing about the dragon eggs is that they do not hatch unless they are in the presence of their true rider. So Eragon one day was running through the spine, basically came across this really pretty looking rock, and he was like, wait a minute, this is a really pretty looking rock. So he picks it up, takes it home with him, thinking that I guess he could trade it or some shit. And lo and behold, it's a dragon egg, and the dragon inside, Saphira, chooses him to be her rider. So then we have this whole rush of war starting kind of out of nowhere because Galbatorix obviously doesn't want any stray dragons running around the place. He doesn't want any dragon riders coming to fruition because he wants to be the only person in charge of dragon magic. There's also a rebellion happening, and Eragon kind of becomes the face of the rebellion, and so for a lot of the books it's him traveling towards where the rebellion is located. The rebellion is called the Varden, And I have to say it like that every time, the Varden. Throughout this journey, he is learning a lot about Saphira, learning a lot about what it takes to be a dragon rider, and also learning about the magic that comes with being tied to a dragon. He meets along the way this guy called Brahm, who I love. He is probably one of my favorite characters ever in a series. He takes care of Eragon, teaches him the ways of a dragon rider because he himself was a dragon rider before and his dragon was killed. And more comes out about them later on, but you have to, I don't want to ruin it because when I got to that twist, I cried. Like, I was emotional. And so in these 4 books, we go on that journey with them. We go on his journey as he kind of like falls in love with this elf called Arya. They never get together. The most frustrating coupling of my life. And the world Christopher Poloni made was just so tangible. Like, I haven't read this book since 2011 and I still remember very vivid details about that world, the characters, how I felt about them, and all of the experiences that they went through. So Inheritance Cycle, 10 out of 10 for me. My next lovely series is going to be The Mortal Instruments by Cassandra Clare, and to be honest, it's kind of everything that Cassandra Clare has ever written, so I don't even know if it's fair to put this in the series or if this needs to be in a universe type video. The Shadowhunter universe is one of my favorite universes ever created, second to none to Harry Potter. The Shadowhunters are these warriors made from angelic blood, and their whole deal is that they fight demons. So they're basically protecting this world that nobody knows about but could end the world at any point in time. Mortal Instruments follows our girl Clary Frey. She had no idea she was a Shadowhunter. It kind of just came to her when her mother was kidnapped one day, and all of the wards that were put around her to hide this world from her kind of released. So she started seeing the world for what it really was, full of demons and full of these Shadowhunter peeps. Now, this is probably the most intense coupling I've ever read as a child, I would say. It was a very confusing coupling to read. If you've read it, then you know why it was confusing. Clary finds out about this world through Jace. What is his name? Harondale at this time? I'm assuming it's Harondale at this time. Jace is basically, you know, blonde, angelic warrior Ken doll, and they fall in love. Clary finds out that her father is basically the end all and be all villain of the Shadowhunter universe, and she sets out to kill him. It very much incorporates the thought process of a quest, unrequited or forbidden love. There's also mistaken identity, and then we have our usual magical systems and magical communities being werewolves, fairies, demons, and then we have the Shadowhunters and warlocks. These series are just all intertwined. Literally, there's so much to read to really get the scope of how this goes that you kind of just have to go into it with an open mind. And if you are a reader, like if you really love to read and take in information, this is definitely the series or universe for you. Cassandra Clare knows how to write action as well as she knows how to write love. So as soon as you flip that first page, you are stuck. You are sitting in a bath full of action and you fall in love with characters. Like, you really fall in love with characters. I remember falling in love with Jace, and then I remember falling in love with Jem and Will, and now I'm in love with James and Matthew, and 10 out of 10 for me. Moving on to some Sarah J. Maas. I found Sarah J. Maas, I want to say, relatively recently, and it's because, like, when you look for Cassandra Clare and you look for authors suggested, she tends to come up. She also has a quite extensive book series called ACOTAR, and that's love-hate for many people. It's all love for me, okay? It's all love for me. I love how Sarah J. Maas writes her relationships. I think I have an issue, to be honest. I just really like the domineering, overprotective, bonehead type male love interest. Again, it just gives very, like, simple, I am man, hear me do things that man does. And that's basically what we get with ACOTAR, which is actually a Beauty and the Beast retelling. Follows this girl called Fair, whatever you want to call her. She used to be in a very affluent family, and they struck poverty when her mother died, and her father basically became inconsolable and reckless, and she became the breadwinner for her family. She became a hunter, so she would go into the woods and be hunting to get her family some food. She has two sisters. Fiera, she kills something over the wall, and over the wall is where the supernatural, the fairies, live. And as doing so, she breaks basically one of the covenants that they have. The court in which she took whoever she took to eat. Tamlin comes and is on some bullshit and it's like, listen to me, you killed someone on my court and now I have to kill somebody of yours. And she's like, no, don't kill anybody, just take me. So you have this moment of, ew, he's a beast, I hate him. And then she's like, wait, I might love him. And then they're in love. And shit hits the fan because of my baby Rhysand, who we thought was the villain in the first book, because we were all rooting for Tamlin, but then Rhysand comes in, he's like, let me stir some shit up. I'm trying to just go through this without having any spoilers, you know, but basically he steals Farah from Tamlin. Like, do with that what you will. It's given very much 365 on Netflix if you've ever watched that movie. I think Sarah J Maas was really the beginning of me being obsessed with there needs to be at least some sort of sex in every single fantasy book that I'm reading about, because as I was getting older, the relationships that I'm reading are just very like heavily teenage sexually charged, but they never get further than a kiss. But here I am sitting amidst this ACOTAR fantasy and it's just boom, and I love it. I really love it. I love Rhysand. I love Cassian even more than I love Rhysand. So Sarah J Maas also has a series called Throne of Glass, which, oh girl, that shit. It follows Selena Sardothian, and she is an assassin, and she is basically imprisoned and then released by the prince. And so it's basically the story of her traveling with the prince and his guards to the kingdom and competing in this competition. Throne of Glass has 8 books, and I think they're all pretty great. I quite enjoyed all of them. I don't think there were like heavy sex scenes in Throne of Glass, like as heavy as they were in ACOTAR, but it was a really good read, and I thought the relationships between characters was really good. Sarah J Maas is a genius when it comes to writing plot twists. I feel like she really gets me. I'm usually very stumped when her surprises set in. Those two series, ACOTAR and Throne of Glass, are definitely faves on my list. Okay, so the second last series we're going to talk about is The Red Queen, and that is by Victoria Aveyard, and that is 4 books. And so basically it's another dystopian society, and this takes place in the kingdom of Norta. You are separated by the color of your blood. So if you have silver blood, you are a royal elite, you know, countess, and you generally have supernatural abilities. And if you are red, you're placed into a servant type position and you have no abilities. And if you are not employed by a silver by the age of 18, you can be conscripted for a war, and that war is between Norta and the Lakelands. We are following Mare Barrow. She is our protagonist. And so basically the story really kicks off because she likes to steal things, and she was in like a tavern one night and decided to steal from this silver. The silver catches her, and instead of arresting her, actually gives her more money, walks her home, listens to her talk about how all of her brothers have been conscripted, and her family is struggling and she herself doesn't want to be conscripted. Turns out the person that she actually pickpocketed was the king of Norta's son, Cal. And Cal had sorted out a job for her in the palace, in all of this, there is another Bachelor type vibe going on where there's kind of like a competition of showing powers of the eligible bachelorettes, and Cal is meant to pick the bachelorette that has the most impressive power and skill. Something strange happened with Mare, and she actually exhibited powers and kind of dusted the girl who was in the run-in for Cal's proposal, because a red is not supposed to be able to have powers. So instead they kind of created this strange story around Mare and actually betrothed her to Cal's youngest brother. And what's crazy is that she was falling in love with Cal at the time, but by spending more time with Maven, started also to have feelings for him. So she's kind of in this love triangle with two brothers. There's a rebellion going on and called the Scarlet Guard for the Reds, and Mare ends up joining the Scarlet Guards after she hears of her brother Shade being killed during his conscription because apparently he was a deserter. And so she kind of goes on this entire journey where she finds out that they are these Reds who are actually mutations and have powers more powerful than the Silver. Just Know is a hot mess, and it's very like, I love him, I don't love him, I love this one, I don't love this one. That is split up into 4 books, and the storyline, honestly, super good. It's giving Bachelor, it's giving Hunger Games, and it's also strangely giving X-Men at the same time with the red mutation. But yeah, that's basically it. I will say that my biggest and most favoritist ever series will obviously be Harry Potter, but I didn't feel like I needed to mention that because isn't that like everyone's favorite series? I'm not sure. I just feel like it wasn't necessary for me to mention that that is the world in which I wish I could live in. Like if I had a choice, I would definitely choose to live in the wizarding world of Harry Potter. I feel like that book gave me a lot of tools in order for me to carry out my life and be like the best friend I could be to my friends, which is something I value a lot. I love friendship stories, and Harry Potter just did that for me. It was just the power of love and the power of friendship, and how that, when strengthened, can defeat anything. And that means a lot to me because I feel that way about my friends and my family. That has been this week's video. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know if you've read any of the series that I love. Let me know any of the series that you love that you think I should check out. And if you're still here, do not forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. And I will see you in our next video, which is another book swap. I'm making Kara read A Meeting with the Elf King. Yes!
I love books.
Don't let me stop you from reading a book. Okay?